The teaser, 3 a.m. in room 402. The blue painter's tape on the floor was peeling at the edges. It had been 3 weeks since Leon Vance had meticulously mapped out our borders, declaring a sovereign state of sanity on his side of the room. Tonight, the tape didn't matter. I sat on the edge of my bed, my breath hitching as I watched the golden boy of St. Jude's crumble. Leon wasn't the statue I had seen in the courtyard. He was sitting on the floor, his expensive silk tie loosened, his forehead resting against the side of my mattress. "Can't go back there, Noah," he whispered, his voice sounding like broken glass. "If I fail this, I'm nothing to them. Just a line on a ledger." I should have pushed him off. I should have made a sarcastic comment about his perfect GPA, but my hand moved before my brain could stop it. My fingers brushed the hair away from his forehead, the first time I'd touched him without wanting to throw a punch. Leon didn't flinch. He leaned into it. "You're not a ledger," I said, my voice barely audible in the dark. "You're just a massive pain in my ass." He let out a wet laugh, looking up at me. The hatred was still there, buried somewhere deep, but it was being drowned out by something much more dangerous. "I hate you," he breathed. "I know," I replied, leaning down until our shadows merged. "I hate you more." Chapter 1. The social suicide of room 402. The air at St. Jude's Academy didn't just feel different. It smelled different. It smelled like beeswax furniture polish, centuries of repressed emotions, and the kind of wealth that didn't just talk, it whispered threats. I adjusted the strap of my messenger bag, the frayed canvas digging into my shoulder. I was a walking bruise on the pristine skin of this campus. While every other guy was walking around in tailored blazers and loafers that cost more than my mom's car, I was rocking a thrift store denim jacket and boots that had seen better days back in public school. I was the scholarship case, the transfer, the troublemaker. And then there was Leon Vance. I saw him before he saw me. He was standing in the center of the courtyard, framed by a Gothic archway like he was posing for a freaking oil painting. Leon was the undisputed son of this solar system. He was the top student, the son of a senator, and possessed a face that belonged on a Roman coin sharp, cold and utterly untouchable. He was currently surrounded by a flock of sycophants, nodding occasionally as if their conversation was a chore he was being paid to endure. "Don't do it, Noah," a voice whispered beside me. I didn't turn. I knew it was Maya. She was the only person who dared to speak to me during my first 3 weeks. "Do what?" I asked, my voice flat. "That thing you do with your eyebrows. You're looking at Leon like you want to challenge him to a duel. He'll ruin you, Noah. His family practically owns the bricks in these walls." "Let him try," I muttered, though my stomach did a nervous flip. "I'm not a brick. I'm a person. Someone should remind him of the difference." I hated him. I hated the way he carried himself, the way he looked down his straight nose at anyone who didn't have a trust fund, and the way he'd publicly humiliated me on my second day for interrupting the flow of traffic in the library. He was a machine disguised as a person, sharp-tongued, cold-blooded, and perfect. The incident, the dining hall, was a cathedral of narcissism. Mahogany tables, stained glass, and the clatter of silver against china. I was just trying to get through the lunch rush without making eye contact with anyone. I had a tray with a bowl of tomato soup and a grilled cheese, the poor man's special, according to the whispers behind me. Leon was sitting at the head of the legacy table. He was mid-sentence, lecturing some poor freshman about the nuances of macroeconomics. His blazer was buttoned, his tie was straight, and he looked like he'd never sweated a day in his life. I walked past him, keeping my eyes on the exit. I just needed to get to the library, finish my prep, and hide. Then it happened. I felt a solid, polished object catch my ankle. It wasn't an accident. I saw the slight, intentional shift of Leon's loafer out of the corner of my eye. Time slowed down. The tray slipped. My fingers scrambled for purchase, but the plastic was slick. The bowl of tomato soup took flight like a red, ceramic bird. Splat. The soup just hit the floor. It had painted a vibrant crimson streak right across the lapel of Leon's ivory-colored wool blazer. A single crouton clung to his silk tie before slowly sliding off and landing in his lap. Leon froze. He didn't move for 3 full seconds. The only sign of life was the way his jaw tightened, the muscle jumping under his pale skin. "Oh," I said. My heart was thumping against my ribs. I knew I should apologize. But then I looked at his face, that mask of pure, condescending fury, and the troublemaker in me took the wheel. "Nice color on you, Vance. Really brings out the heartless in your eyes." The collective gasp from the room was audible. Leon stood up slowly. He was taller than me, and up close, the coldness radiating off him was like standing next to an open freezer. "You're a stain, Noah Miller," he hissed, his voice low and vibrating with a rage he was clearly trying to keep under wraps. "You're a glitch in the system, a clerical error that never should have been allowed through these gates. And you're a statue," I shot back, stepping into his space. I could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something expensive. "Does it hurt, knowing that even with all that money, you can't buy a personality that people actually like?" His eyes flashed. For a split second, I thought he might actually swing at me. Instead, he looked at the crowd. Every single person had their phone out. "Clean this up," Leon said, his voice regaining that terrifying, detached calm. "Clean it yourself," I replied. I stepped over the puddle of soup, intentionally splashing a bit more on his shoes, and walked out. The reassignment. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. There's no room for negotiation," the housing registrar said, her eyes fixed on a spreadsheet. "But my scholarship package guaranteed a single room in the West Wing," I argued. "The West Wing is flooded, Noah. A pipe burst during the night. We've had to double up everyone in the East Tower." She finally looked up. "You've been reassigned to room 402. It's a suite, but the living area is shared. You'll be fine." "With who?" I asked, a sense of impending doom settling in my gut. Before she could answer, the door to the office slammed open. "I refuse," a voice barked. Leon Vance marched up to the desk, his ruined blazer draped over his arm. He looked even more livid than he had in the dining hall. "I do not double up, especially not with him." He pointed a finger at me as if I were a pile of trash that had gained sentience. "The computer makes the assignments based on availability and GPA compatibility," the registrar said, pushing 2 brass keys across the desk. "You are both in the top 5%. You are both in room 402. Move along. Room 4 and 2. The walk to the East Tower was the longest 10 minutes of my life. Leon walked 3 paces ahead of me. When we reached the floor, I shoved my key into the lock and pushed the door open. It was small. It wasn't a suite in the way Leon probably understood. Chapter 2. The Blue Tape Boundary. The first night was a disaster. Leon didn't just sleep. He performed a ritual. He laid out his clothes for the next day with the precision of a surgeon, then crawled into bed and went as still as a corpse. I, on the other hand, stayed up scrolling through the viral comments on the soup incident video. "Turn off the light, Miller," Leon groaned from the darkness. "The blue light from your phone is reaching my side of the room." "There is no side, Leon," I whispered back, leaning over the edge of my bed until I was practically in his face. "It's one room. Deal with it." He sat abruptly, his hair slightly messy for the first time since I'd met him. "Fine, if you won't respect personal space, I'll define it for you. The border." The next morning I woke up to a scratching sound. Leon was on his knees, stretching a line of blue painter's tape directly down the center of the hardwood floor. "What are you doing, psycho?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "Establishing sovereignty," he snapped. He stood up, pointing to my messy pile of shoes. "That side is yours. It is a land of chaos and stained denim. This side," he gestured to his perfectly aligned desk, "is civilization. Do not cross the line." I grinned and immediately put my foot an inch over the tape. "Civilization looks boring, Vance." The pressure, the tension followed us to class. We were paired up for a massive economics project. The Legacy Project. "I'll do the work, you stay out of the way," Leon hissed as we left the lecture hall. "Not happening," I shot back, catching up to him in the narrow hallway. "I'm not a charity case. We do it together, or I'll tell the dean you're refusing to collaborate." He stopped so fast I almost hit his back. He looked rattled. His phone was buzzing in his pocket again. "Father, 5 missed calls." "Fine," he whispered, his voice cracking just enough for me to notice. "Tonight, 9 p.m. Don't be late." Chapter 3. The Crack in the Marble. By 9 p.m., the tension in room 402 had reached a fever pitch. The blue tape on the floor felt like a high-voltage wire. On my side, I had my laptop open, a half-eaten bag of chips acting as my only comfort. On Leon's side, the silence was so heavy it felt like it had its own zip code. "If you eat one more of those," Leon said, his eyes never leaving his screen, "I will personally see to it that the vending machines are removed from this wing." "It's a potato chip, Vance, not a grenade," I muttered, but I set the bag down anyway. The forced collaboration. We were supposed to be analyzing market trends for the Legacy Project, but the only thing I was analyzing was the way Leon's fingers were trembling as he typed. He was a machine, sure, but the gears were grinding. "You're overcomplicating the data," I said, leaning over the border to point at his screen. "If you look at the consumer index from, I don't need help from someone who thinks a market is just a place to buy cheap hoodies," he snapped. "I'm literally a math prodigy, you elitist prick," I shot back, standing up. Check the formula on line 4. You carried the decimal wrong. Even God's gift to economics makes mistakes when he's running on 3 hours of sleep and pure spite. Leon froze. He looked at the screen, squinted, and then his shoulders slumped just a fraction. He had made a mistake. A simple one. Correct it, he whispered. The phone call. Before I could move, his phone vibrated on the desk. The name Father flashed in bold, aggressive letters. Leon's entire face went pale, not his usual porcelain pale, but a ghostly, sickly grey. He didn't pick it up. He just stared at it like it was a predator. You gonna answer that? I asked, my voice dropping the defensive edge. It's none of your business, Miller. The phone stopped. Then, a second later, it started again. The buzzing was the only sound in the room. Leon's hand reached out, shaking. He finally swiped accept. Yes, sir, Leon said. His voice was different, flat, hollow, and devoid of the sharp bite he usually used on me. I know, the rankings. Yes, I'm aware of the viral video. It was an accident. No, sir, I'll fix it. I'll fix everything. He went silent for a long time, just listening to the muffled, angry shouting coming from the other end. I watched him. The golden boy was shrinking in front of my eyes. He looked small. He looked terrified. I understand, Leon whispered. I won't fail again. The aftermath. He hung up and sat there, staring at the blank wall. He didn't move for 3 minutes. Hey, I said, cautiously stepping over the blue tape. I didn't care about the sovereignty anymore. You okay? Stay on your side, Noah, he said. But there was no venom in it. He sounded like a ghost. Your dad's a real piece of work, isn't he? I sat on the edge of my bed, just 2 feet away from his chair. My mom yells too, but usually because I forgot to take the trash out, not because I'm not perfect enough for the family brand. Leon finally turned to look at me. The mask was gone. His eyes were raw, and for a second, the hatred was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated exhaustion. You have no idea, he breathed. If I'm not first, I'm nothing. If I'm not perfect, I don't exist. I looked at the blue tape, then back at him. Well, you're currently failing at being perfect. Vance, you're a mess. And honestly, it's the most I've ever liked you. He let out a short, jagged laugh that caught in his throat. I hate you, Miller. I know, I said, reaching out and clicking the save button on his laptop for him. Now move over. We're fixing that data, and then you're going to sleep before you collapse and ruin the floorboards with your expensive head. For the first time, he didn't push me away. Chapter 4. The Gala and the Garret. If the room was a pressure cooker, the St. Jude's annual scholarship gala was a ticking time bomb. The school administration, in their infinite wisdom, or perhaps their love for public relations stunts, decided that since the soup video had gone viral, Leon and I needed to be the face of institutional harmony. We were the poster boys for the gala, the elite legacy, and the brilliant scholarship student, side by side, proving that money and merit could coexist. I look like a penguin, I muttered, tugging at the collar of the tuxedo the school had rented for me. It was stiff, smelled like mothballs, and the bow tie was currently trying to strangle me. You look like a penguin that's been through a tumble dryer, Leon countered, though there was no heat in it. He was standing in front of the mirror on his side of the room, adjusting his own cufflinks. His tuxedo wasn't rented. It was bespoke, fitting him like a second skin. He looked like he'd stepped off a runway, yet his hands were still doing that small, rhythmic tremor I'd noticed the night before. Here, he said, turning toward me. He crossed the blue tape without even looking down. If you're going to be my partner for the evening, you at least need to look like you know how to dress yourself. He reached out, his long fingers working the silk of my tie. He was so close I could see the pulse jumping in his neck. My breath hitched. For a second, the sarcasm died in my throat. The enemies part of the script felt very far away. Don't get used to it, Miller, he whispered, his eyes meeting mine. Wouldn't dream of it, Vance. The line. Den. Ballroom was a sea of glittering gowns and sharp suits. Every person there was worth more than the town I grew up in. Smile, Noah, Leon hissed through gritted teeth as we stood near the stage. The dean is watching. And more importantly, my father is at table 1. Looked over. Senator Vance was a silver-haired shark in a 3-piece suit. He wasn't looking at the stage. He was looking at Leon with an expression that made my blood run cold. It wasn't pride. It was an evaluation, like he was checking a piece of livestock for defects. Is he always like that? I asked, leaning in closer to Leon than was strictly necessary. Only on days ending in E, Leon replied. The night was a blur of shaking hands and fake smiles. Played the part of the grateful scholar, while Leon played the generous mentor. It was nauseating. But every time I felt like snapping, I'd feel Leon's hand brush against my arm, a subtle signal to keep it together. The confrontation. The break came during the silent auction. I'd slipped out to the balcony to breathe, the cold night air a relief against the suffocating perfume inside. I wasn't alone for long. So this is the one, a booming, cultured, said behind me. Turn T. Senator Vance. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on the slightly frayed cuffs of my rented jacket. "Mr. Miller," he said, stepping onto the balcony, "my son tells me you're quite the mathematician. It's a shame your social graces haven't caught up to your arithmetic." "I think my social graces are doing fine, Senator," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "I haven't spilled soup on anyone all night." He didn't laugh. "Leon is a Vance. He has a trajectory. You are a distraction. A viral moment that the school is using for optics. Don't mistake his forced proximity for actual interest. When this wing is fixed, you'll be back in the shadows where you belong." "Is that what you tell him?" I stepped forward, troublemaker in me roaring to life, that people are just tools or distractions, because from where I'm sitting, he's a hell of a lot more interesting than your trajectory allows him to be. "Noah." Leon was standing in the doorway, his face ashen. "Go inside, Leon," the senator said, not even turning around. "I'm having a conversation with your roommate." "No," Leon said. His voice was quiet, but it had a new edge to it, one I hadn't heard before. "The gala is over for us, Father. We've done the photos, we've done the handshakes." Leon walked over, grabbed my arm, and pulled me toward the door. He didn't look back at his father. He didn't wait for permission. The aftermath. We didn't speak until we were back in room 402. The silence was different tonight. It wasn't the silence of a cold war. It was the silence of a shared secret. Leon threw his jacket onto his bed, a rare act of messiness, and sat down, burying his face in his hands. "You shouldn't have said that to him," he muttered. "He'll make your life a nightmare." "He was already doing that," I said, sitting on the edge of my bed. I reached across the gap, my hand hovering over the blue tape. "Why let him to you like that, Leon? You're the smartest person in this school. You don't need his trajectory." Leon looked up, his whiskey-colored eyes shimmering in the dim light. "Because without him, I don't know who I am, Noah. I've spent 19 years being the Vance heir. If I'm not that, what am I?" "You're the guy who laid down blue tape because he couldn't handle a messy roommate," I said softly. "You're the guy who corrected my line 4 formula. You're a but you're you." The tension in the room shifted. It wasn't about the gala or the senator anymore. It was about the 2 feet of space between us. Leon reached out, his fingers brushing against mine, right over the center of the blue tape. "I hate that you saw that," he whispered. "I don't," I replied. For the first time, neither of us pulled away. Chapter 5. The Sabotage and the Shield. The morning after the gala didn't bring a happily ever after. Instead, it brought a cold reality check. The blue tape was still on the floor, but it felt less like a border and more like a scar. I woke up to the sound of typing. Leon was at his desk, his back a rigid line of tension. He hadn't even looked at me when I got out of bed, but the air in the room was thick with a new kind of dread. "Don't check the forums," Leon said, his voice like dry ice. Naturally, I checked the forums. The leak. The headline was everywhere. "Scholarship fraud. Did Noah Miller falsify his entry exams?" Below the headline was a series of cropped images of my original application documents, highlighted with red circles claiming inconsistencies in my previous school's transcripts. It was a lie, a surgical, professional-grade lie. My stomach dropped into my shoes. "This is your father," I whispered, the phone trembling in my hand. "He's actually doing it. He's erasing me. He doesn't just erase people." "Noah," Leon said, finally turning around. His face was a mask of calculated fury. "He dismantles them. He wants to show me what happens when I associate with distractions." "I have to go to the dean," I said, grabbing my bag, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I have the original papers in my trunk. I can prove." "It won't matter," Leon interrupted, standing up and crossing into my territory. He didn't stop at the tape this time. He stopped right in front of me, his shadow tall and imposing. "Board of Directors is already meeting. My father doesn't play to win an argument. He plays to end the game, the choice." For the next 3 hours, I was a ghost. People moved away from me in the hallways. The whispers weren't about the soup anymore. They were about integrity and criminality. I went to the administration office, but the registrar wouldn't even see me. "The matter is under review," was all the secretary would say. I retreated to room 402. Sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark, I felt like I was disappearing. Everything I'd worked for, the double shifts, the late nights, the chance for a real future, was being burned down by a man who didn't even know my last name yesterday. The door opened. Leon walked carrying a leather briefcase. "Pack your things," he said. I looked up, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. "Already? You couldn't even wait for the official letter to kick me out?" "Not your clothes, Noah. Your laptop and your original files," Leon snapped. He looked different. There was a spark in his whiskey-colored eyes that I'd never seen before. It wasn't the golden boy look. It was the look of a rebel. "We're going to the board meeting. They won't let us in." "They'll let me in," Leon said, straightening his tie. And you're coming with me as my legal consultant. I've spent my whole life learning how to navigate my father's world. It's time I used that education for something other than making him happy. The boardroom. We didn't just walk into the meeting. Leon practically kicked the doors open. Senator Vance was sitting at the head of the long mahogany table, surrounded by the dean and the board. He looked at us, at Leon specifically, with a look of cold disappointment. "Leon, this is a profession," the senator said. "Take Mr. Miller back to his quarters so he can begin his exit process." "No," Leon said. He walked to the center of the room, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "I've spent the last 4 hours cross-referencing the leaked documents with the school's encrypted server. I found the IP address of the person who uploaded the alterations." He set a tablet on the table and slid it toward the dean. "The upload came from a VPN registered to Vance Holdings," Leon said, his voice never wavering. "If this board moves forward with the expulsion of Noah Miller based on fabricated evidence produced by a member of this very board, well, I imagine the press would find that even more viral than a bowl of soup." The silence in the room was deafening. I looked at Leon's profile, the sharp jaw, the determined eyes. He was throwing away his trajectory to save mine.